Well, hey, recording. We have started recording. So good morning again, everyone. We have an exciting presentation today. I want to thank Westwind for helping to sponsor this, and HP is our presenter. So we'll go ahead to the next slide. Thank you, Emily. All right. So I think most of you online, it sounds like most of you are connected with the New Mexico Technology Council, but I'll just briefly go through. I mean, we look forward to having the opportunity at our peer groups to make sure that everyone is connected with the Tech Council. So with that, we are a member-led organization. We've been around for more than 20 years. As a matter of fact, I believe it's our 21st anniversary. And our mission is to really address the technology industry's top priorities. And we do that through a variety of ways. One is connecting folks with our peer groups, connecting through our peer groups. And while this is our cybersecurity, we also have a data science or big data group. We have a very strong women in technology, as well as a 3D printing peer group. So we encourage you to join any of those. And most of them meet either monthly or bi-monthly. So we have two signature events: our Women in Technology Award Celebration, which is in the spring, summer this year, but hopefully we'll move it back to spring next year. And then our Experience IT Conference, which is in the fall, which is scheduled for November 4th, and you'll see more information about that in this presentation. We have a very strong policy an advocacy group that meets usually around legislative session, but I think they'll start meeting very soon. And we are always looking for opportunities to promote our members or connect our members in the community. So if you are not familiar with the Technology Council, I encourage you to reach out. I want to introduce the NMTC team. We do a lot, and there are three of us. Deborah Breitfeld, she is our executive director, and she's on the line today. Morning, Deborah.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mary. Thanks so much for joining us. Looking forward to the presentation.
And Emily Bennett is our marketing and events manager. Good morning, Emily. And she's running. All right, and I'm Mary Tiemann. I'm the Community Relations and Membership Development Director. All right, of course, we couldn't do what we do without our community partners, so we always like to recognize them. We're so excited that this slide has now moved to 2 slides. So, so always grateful to our community partners. And if your logo is not on that list, I'd love to tell you how it could be. Quickly, we have some upcoming events. Our Big Data peer group, they're going to meet next Tuesday, August 17th. And you can register for that now. Just visit our website. We are working with AFRL for a virtual tour. So if you're interested in what the Air Force Research Lab does, join this virtual tour. It'll be on August 18th. Our Women in Technology group, they will meet August 26th, and that'll be at Fat Pipe. And I believe the registration for that is open as well. And our next cyber peer group will be September 9th at 11 o'clock. And the registration for that will open within the next couple of weeks. So be looking for that. All of our focus right now is on our next big event, which is Experience IT. So mark your calendars. It's November 4th, and it will be at the Embassy Suites. So we look forward to seeing all of you there. There will be a full track for cybersecurity, so you'll have plenty of opportunities to join sessions throughout the day and hear from some amazing keynote speakers. These are the folks who've already signed on to sponsor Experience IT. So thank you very much. If your logo is on this list, if it's not, I would love to tell you how to add it. And the best way to stay in touch with what's going on at the Tech Council is to join our mailing list. And you can do that by visiting our website. And we encourage you to follow us on social media if you're not. Share and like our information and follow us. So I just want to take a moment to recognize our cyber peer group. And these are the folks who come together monthly to put together these presentations. So Vince Urias, he is our chair for this committee, and he is with Sandia National Laboratories. Tony Carrata, thank you so much for all that you do for this group. Sam Dickey is with Tech Systems. Mark Fidel is with RiskSense. David Kiston is with Sandia National Laboratories. Lenny Washington, thank you very much, from Westwind. And Dick Wilkinson is with Proof Labs. All right. And with that, I want to especially thank Lenny for working with HP to put together this presentation. We started these discussions a couple of months ago, and we know that, I mean, I'm blown away by how important the information is that's going to be shared today. So Lenny, thank you so much for all of your help with this. I'd also like to thank everyone from HP who's on the line today. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ben Timms with HP.
Oh, I should unmute myself if I'm going to talk. Hey, thanks very much. My name is Ben Timms, and as the sign near my head here would indicate, I'm a print security and solutions expert. I noticed that we have some fairly heavy hitters here in the room, and for those of you who have advanced degrees and do this for a living, guess what? The good news is I'm hoping this is kind of a review for most of you. We're going to be talking about security at the edge. We're going to be talking about IoT security, but it's designed as an overview and not super getting into the weeds, into the details. Now, this is a conversation, and while I have my slide deck and what I kind of brought to present, you guys are welcome to ask questions at kind of any time if you need to. I do reserve the right to say, let's table that if I need to make sure we can get through the content we need to get to. Yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll right into it as we kind of get going here. So everybody knows that COVID has been a massive disruptor for everyone, pretty much planet wide, and it's been a huge disruptor for business, for public sector, across the board, and the bad guys, as I'm going to call them, our cyber threat has been up significantly due to COVID. The overall, what our friends at CIFIRMA have measured was about a 600% increase in cyber threat, cyber attacks overall and across the board. But that's kind of an averaged number. We've seen in some sectors, for instance, in healthcare, more than 1,800% year over year attacks against healthcare infrastructure. And you guys follow the news. I'm sure you know that we've had pipelines and interesting things being attacked. But because we were going from relatively safe environments and we're taking all of our knowledge workers, we're sending them home, whether IT personnel happens to be them, right, into relatively unsecure environments. Where there's change, where there's chaos, there's always opportunity for people who are agents of chaos. So challenges that we have seen as corporate or public sector security managers is we're taking a large number of our endpoints and we're putting them outside our networks and putting them onto other people's networks, which is always dangerous. We have which makes it very hard to update devices. It makes it very hard to make sure that we're staying on top of security. Our command and control capabilities have been somewhat scrambled. Now we're getting better, and we've had almost 18 months now to kind of try to figure this out, but there are still significant challenges. One of the big problems we had is that things like VPN networks, a lot of them were not ready to scale when we're sending 2/3 or more of our workforce home. And so that was, or especially earlier in the pandemic, that was a big deal. And productivity solutions, we were not geared for at-home issues. So keeping our devices safe, right? Keeping our workers safe and keeping our information safe is a whole new level of challenge when we're looking at doing things remotely. So when we look at some of the trends that we're seeing overall, of course, we all know there's the pandemic, and that's done a bunch of interesting things here. But some of the trends that we're seeing is that inside security threats are becoming a major issue. Now, it's always been an inside problem. You know, someone clicks on a link they shouldn't have. Someone opens an attachment that was, probably shouldn't have done that. So dealing with what I refer to as benign internal threats has always been, and let's be honest, that's an increasing security issue. But here's the thing, the bad guys are getting really good at what they do. And cybercrime is going to be, the best estimate I've seen is that by the end of this calendar year, it'll be about a $6 trillion industry, which means that, the bad guys, as I'm going to refer to them, have essentially unlimited resources. And one of the things that they're doing with that is when they are doing a targeted attack, one of the easiest ways to do a targeted attack is find someone who works at company X or at organization X, identify an individual who may have some significant debt and say, hey, if I paid you $10,000 and I sent you an email, would you go ahead and click on this link for me? So a rising tide of non-benign, but like active, and sometimes it's not money, sometimes it's someone has an axe to grind or something like that. There are other ways to do that, but we're seeing a rising trend in internal threats that are not just us against the standard level of human vulnerability. It's becoming more and more active human intervention or human neglect, or however you want to put it. Another big thing we're seeing is that cyber criminals are pivoting towards long-term command and control presence on networks. They understand that we are really good at firewalls and antivirus, right? And when I say the word security, most people, not security experts necessarily, but your average person on the street is going to say, oh, we got a firewall. Hey, we've got antivirus. We're good. Well, the bad guys are well aware of that, and they are looking for everything around firewalls and antivirus. So they're looking at device level security more and more. And they're looking for command and control capabilities, a la the West Wind, the Solar Wind attacks, West Wind. West Wind. There's an extra mention for you there. And one of the biggest vulnerabilities we're seeing is the internet, IoT, or as I like to call it, the Internet of Things that probably shouldn't be on the internet. I'm pretty sure everyone here, you probably have an internet connected television. I went to Costco a couple of weeks ago and actually tried to find a television that wasn't IoT. And yeah, they don't sell those anymore. That's become standard. But more and more, we're seeing internet connected microwaves and refrigerators and tennis shoes and tennis rackets and toothbrushes. The idea here is that anything that is smart enough to become aware and talk to a network is also a potential threat on your network. And you see the cartoon there, and it's a little slightly over the top, but here's the thing. When we're looking at IoT development, here's how that generally speaking goes. I have an idea for a product. I design the product. I spend a lot of time making sure it's got all the features that it possibly can. I'm going to send that off to somewhere in China, Guangzhou or wherever, and they're going to make the actual physical thing. While they're making that, I'm designing a stack that I'm going to put into the device. I'm going to cram all the features that I possibly can into those devices to make sure I make it as attractive to my customers as I possibly can. Manufacturing gets done with what it does. I'm going to load the firmware on there. I'm going to ship those suckers. If they sell well, then I'm going to do version 1.1. I'm going to cram as many extra features as I possibly can into that. I'm going to send off to Guangzhou for another 4,000 or however many I'm going to make. And we're going to do that cycle again and again and again. But what haven't I said in all of that, talking about how IoT gets developed? Yeah, security, right? It is an afterthought at best for most environments. And the IoT is almost impossible to avoid anymore, right? Everyone wants to be connected at all times. On corporate networks, on your specific environment, wherever they happen to be, everybody has, when you look at the average number of devices per user, 15 years ago, it was something like 1.2 devices per user. Now we're somewhere over 4. right? And everybody wants to have all of these things connected all the time. And IoT isn't just smartwatches and tablets and that kind of stuff. It's not just, hey, I've got a smart light. It also encompasses things like printers and medical devices, very critically. And some of these medical devices can't be updated. There's no way to update security on some like PET scanners, that type of thing. So how do we keep our IoT devices as safe as we can? And additionally, how do we keep the rest of our environment safe from the IoT devices, right? It's kind of a two-way streak of how do we ensure that we are as secure as we possibly can? Well, here's the thing. IoT devices can be exploited in lots of different ways. If you're curious about how easy it is to do, check out showdown.io, do a search for any type of device. Look for cameras, look for laser jet printers, look for whatever you like to. I teach a class in printer security, and about once a week we go out to Shodan and I say, so how many print devices are we going to find today? And usually it's around 10 grand, if 10,000 of them just casually looking that are exposed directly out to the internet. Now, I understand that is not a best practice for almost anybody, but the idea here is that it is incredibly easy for us to select and identify large numbers of IoT devices from tools like Shodan, and then we can attempt to exploit those devices. And we could join them to a botnet like Mirai, which was designed specifically to have many IoT devices, including some printers, are and have been used by the Mirai botnet. And once we have access to an IoT device, we can use that as an ingress point onto the network. We can use it for data exfiltration. Security happens in layers, as I'm sure I don't need to tell this group, but every little bit helps, right? Every camel's nose underneath the tent, absolutely a big deal. Are there publicly available tools that you can use to hack printers specifically? Sorry, I'm a printer guy. HP pays the bills. I have to talk about printers here, but I think the principles are pretty common across lots of devices, right? So there's publicly available from GitHub. You can download the PRET tools, the printer resource X something kit. Anyway, sorry. You don't have to be a hacker. You can be a script kiddie, to use the vernacular here. There are excellent tools out there that will hack print at, it's the device that's on the network. It's the network stack that's on the device. And you also need to think about, what about the actual documents? If we're scanning documents onto the network, well, that's an opportunity to add or subtract data from the network and things that get printed, there can be vital information in the actual print jobs themselves. So it's information about the network. It's information about the users on the network. It's the device itself. Can we use that to, I don't know. One common one is to have printers start being Bitcoin mining machines after hours, right? Let's generate some revenue that way. And by the way, it's part of my botnet, and it does a bunch of other stuff as well. So there's lots of reasons why hackers would be interested in devices that are at that edge. So what can you do? It's the basics, right? You'll have to start with the basics, as we all do. IoT devices should be on guest networks. If you have IoT devices that are a part of your business or part of your organization, the strong suggestion is they be on a specific network just for those IoT devices, because we have to keep them isolated from everything else whenever possible. So for our knowledge workers who have been sent home or are flex working, helping them to understand that they need to have multiple networks at home. And that's pretty common. Most people have a home network and a guest network, but most home routers can do more than two. And if they can only do two, then guess what? That guest network, that's where we're going to put our IoT devices. Or we set up a specific, depending on what their capabilities are, you should have a business network at home if you're working from home on a business or some kind of an organizational device, right? Because every device on a network needs to be as secure as we can possibly make it. And that means keeping different networks separate, always a good idea. We should have specific networks for corporate devices or for organizational devices versus what's going on in your home stuff. You don't want your children's Chromebooks to be on the same network that your incredibly valuable personal or departmental information is on there. Patch. Here's the thing. Over time, here's what I like to say is given enough time and enough resources, absolutely anything and everything can be hacked. Now, the corollary to that rule is that if you don't update security over time, it gets less and less secure. We find zero-day vulnerabilities every single day in devices, big and small, from every manufacturer of hardware, software, firmware, it doesn't matter. So over time, we patch these vulnerabilities. Windows, the famous example here is that Windows calls home every Tuesday. It's Patch Tuesday. Every device on the planet calls home to Redmond, and they get updates. And sometimes that's, hey, we get functionality updates, but more often than not, we're trying to patch vulnerabilities in those devices. So for IoT devices, for even routers and that kind of stuff, we still need to update the firmware on those things as well. You can effectively think of the firmware on a printer or a router or most IoT devices as the operating system. If we are updating operating systems like Windows 10 for security purposes on a regular basis, guess what? We need to start monitoring the firmware levels of our IoT devices. And some of those, we're going to increase security by keeping them as far away from our other assets as possible. And some of those, it's not possible to do that as much. It's okay to have printers on a separate network until you need that printer to do more than just spit out pages, right? Because printers are more often than not, it's the gateway between the virtual world and the physical world. That's where we take our very important data that we take care of and look at and manage, and we turn it into something physical that you can touch and taste and pass through your lower intestine and mail to someone else and do whatever you need to. So that gateway between physical and virtual world needs to be paid attention to, right? Kind of gotten off on a bit of a tangent here, my apologies, but just to go through again, making sure we're covering the basics, using VPNs and other secure tunneling technologies whenever that's possible. Backups have become mission critical at all levels, even at home. And if you're not aware, as malware creators are getting better and better at what they do, they're getting more and more subtle with what they do. So the newest trend is, for instance, for ransomware, they don't simply start encrypting data automatically. They will sit and wait until the backups have been corrupted. They can wait for sometimes weeks, days, or months until they're in the backups. They want to make sure that when they pull that trigger, when they start to encrypt data for a ransomware attack, that it's as difficult as possible to recover. So you have to pay them instead of going to your backups or whatever. So a whole new level of attention needs to be paid for backups, even at home, right? And that means we're relying more and more on our end users to do some of these vital tasks. Weakest link on any network is human beings, right? It's not hardware, it's not software. Wetware is almost always the issue, at least in some way. So we have to protect against that as much as possible as well. Using admin passwords everywhere and having that be something that's easy to change, something that should be managed, hopefully via some kind of LDAP or Active Directory. I'm going to give you another example here. When we get a new server or a laptop out of the box and we're getting it ready to be used, we spend a tremendous amount of time and effort and energy imaging that device, getting it ready to use, putting correct passwords, loading operating systems, loading antivirus, all those wonderful things, and getting ready to use them. Well, here's the thing. Printers have all the same capabilities that servers have. Honestly, they have processors and memory, they have storage, they run operating systems and applications, they talk out to networks, all those basic functionality. They even have an embedded web server built onto the printer. But when you get a printer out of the box or any IoT device, what do? Usually you set one setting. You give it an IP address and you wave goodbye. You don't even set a password on that embedded web server. So managing things like passwords and the security settings on all of those devices on your network can be really, really important. Multi-factor authentication, I'll bring up just briefly. Most of us, when I say multi-factor authentication, you say to me, "Hey Ben, I've got one of these, and I put in my username and password, and then it shoots me a text message, and that's multi-factor authentication, right?" Yeah, that's multi-factor authentication. But here's what many people are not aware of: it is trivially easy to spoof the SIM card of your mobile device. Very easy to intercept those multi-factor authentication things that come over text messaging. So moving from a text messaging two-factor authentication to something like Authy or Ping, or there are lots of other services that actually generate a secure password on a regular basis, a rolling basis, much more difficult to spoof or intercept. And it's significantly more secure to use something like that than it is just to continue to get text messages, right? That's okay security. We can do better, right? Okay. Yeah. And for the love of all things holy, please use a password manager. And you should probably have one for work that is separate from the one that you use at home. Human beings are really, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, guys, but I'm just, let me get this out and I'll feel better. We'll all feel better. Okay. Password man. I don't know any of my passwords. I know how to log into my laptop. I know how to log into my phone. Aside from that, every other password I have is a long string of randomly generated encrypted numbers that are saved by my password manager. Do not use the password managers that are built into your browsers. Those are insufficiently secure, although Firefox is getting much better. And this is not a commercial for Firefox. This is just Ben Tim's assessment and no one else's, but the ability to generate random passwords that are impossible to guess, that are difficult to crack, vitally important. We have seen so much information, so many data grabs of so many people's data that by using rainbow tables and dictionary cracks, it's just not secure anymore. And using a password manager is not an option, even at a business level, at a personal level, any of these things. My password manager works on my phone, my laptop, my tablet. It does absolutely everything, everywhere I need it to be. And it is a major, so it doesn't matter which one you use. Make sure you get one that will work on all of your devices, please, so you don't have a massive hole in your security. I'm going to get off of this soapbox because of the crowd we have here. Yeah, you guys know it. You should know. Hopefully, please, God, tell me that you guys know that this is a
Hey,
big
Ben.
deal. Yeah.
Ben, do you recommend, Fiona was asking if you recommend what password manager?
I recommend that you use a password manager. There are many products out there. I'm not here to endorse any of them. I could tell you the one that I use. It's not a common one. I'm not sure that it's any better than any of the others. I'm going to ask you to do a tiny bit of research, and I will give you one suggestion. If a product is free, you are the product, okay? And I'm willing to pay annually a tiny bit of money for much better security. So the free ones are fine, I guess. Not my suggestion. All right. Any other questions? Because I'm talking 1,000 miles a second here. Let's take a deep breath and see if we have questions so far. I've either bored you to death or stunned you or something.
No, that's great. And I would also recommend comments too, questions and comments.
Yes, absolutely.
And engage interaction. Okay.
So I'm going to get away from just IoT generally, and I know I've already talked about a bunch about print specifically, but there are some extra layers of security that we need to think about. I'm an IT guy from way back, and I've worked at HP for almost 20 years now. And most of that time I spent working with what is now HPE, server storage and networking, right? I did big iron, I did compute clusters, I did, all kinds of data center, cool, blah, 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 right? And I loved doing that. And then about 3 years ago, I had a buddy of mine say, "Hey, Ben, I think you need to come work for HPI." And I loved my technology that I was playing with. I said, "So why the hell would I want, printers bake plastic onto a page or they shoot ink onto a page. Why are these toys that I would want to come play with. I said, maybe I could come work for like the workstation people. And he said, no, 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 you need to come work for the printer division. And I kind of scoffed a little bit. He said, hey, you know what? Call our friend John. Now, my best friend since I'm 14 years old is one of the network managers at the largest community college in the western half of the United States. And I called John. I said, hey, what's up with printers? He said, we just got out of an executive conference with all of our C-levels. We spent a week talking about how we're going to secure our print environment from and for our students. And that was kind of the beginning of my awakening into, is print security a big deal? Now, why do I tell you that long, kind of rambling story? I think it's a pretty good illustration of how many of us have, and especially if you've been an IT person, the printer's the last thing on the network you want to think about, right? If it breaks, it's a problem. If it's a human being trying to connect to it, it's a problem. If I have to worry about toner and all that kind of stuff, it's nothing but pain, right, for an IT person. But here's the thing. It's also a computer. It has all the same pieces, parts, right? It runs an operating system. We have to think about security of these things. So more and more, we generally are now starting to pay attention to other devices on our network. And we have to look at these things in layers. And there are layers of security on printers, the same way they're on servers and desktops and laptops. You have to worry about updating the operating system. Only on a printer, we don't call it an operating system, we call it firmware. And yes, I understand that those things are, I'm drawing an analogy here, okay? I get it. But there are security implications. If you have never updated a firmware on a printer, guess what? There's probably a 0-day somewhere on that bad boy. You need to update your firmware, right? You need to worry about all the settings on that printer. Hey, did you know that most printers come with FTP turned on? That's not a great idea, right? Especially in a device that has a hard drive and works as a server. And hey, can printers be used to spread ransomware and other kinds of malware? Can and have all the time. So we need to think about different layers of security. And security is not one thing, it's everything. I get it. For print, we can kind of break it down into 3 big categories. You need to secure the device. That means firmware. It means all the settings on those devices, things like what protocols can we use, that type of thing, okay? Are we encrypting all of the information that's coming to and staying on and leaving that device, right? Device security. We need to worry about the data that's coming to and staying on. And so device data, and then the documents themselves. In some environments, security of those documents can be mission critical. If you're in education, the 9th grade biology paper, we don't really care about anybody stealing that. But we certainly care about, hey, can we steal that student's data? Because if I've got a 9th grader, guess what? That kid's going to have a credit ratings eventually. And if he doesn't have one yet, if I can get his data, that's incredibly valuable to a hacker, right? To dark web, that stuff goes for hundreds of dollars, especially if it's a child from an affluent area, right? And they are getting that specific about, this is the data we're trying to steal. Okay, so data, documents, and devices are the things we need to think about. And then, of course, there are, thinking about these things in layers, the same way IT professionals, security people always do. We have to think about it beyond the network scan. Hey, Ben, I do pen testing. That's great. I'm so happy that you are having people coming in and doing penetration testing. What are they looking for? Do they check firmware on your printers? If they don't, guess what? That's a big hole. Are they looking at what you do with print jobs? Especially if maybe it's important data, do you have shred bins near your printers so we can get, have security of the device, or of the document, even after it's been printed? Do you have authentication at your printers? Do you know who's printing? Pull print solutions are incredibly important to make sure we're securing the documents that come out of those printers, right? Different layers of security need to be considered when we're talking about print environments. I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions.
Yeah, Ben, this is Lenny Washington. I just you mentioned data, and you're right. I mean, some of the data in terms of privacy, compliance, right? PCI data, GDPR. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Sometimes we do forget if it's in hard form or if it's in software farm, data is key for hospitals and other areas. So thanks for touching on that.
So you should have a written security policy for your print environment. Especially if you're in healthcare, there's no excuse not to. And quite frankly, if you're in healthcare, you're subject to HIPAA, right? And HIPAA, the magic thing about HIPAA that I like to talk about, if you have a written policy, even if it's a bad one, even if you didn't actually follow your own written policy, they kind of give you partial credit. So that you're going to be able to reduce your fines, even if something horrible happens. They're going to say, well, hey, you tried, and you may not get maximum fine for at least having some kind of a written violation. Now, for those of you who aren't in healthcare, you should still have a written policy saying this is how we treat our printers. This is how we set them up. This is the protocols they're allowed to use, right? It's important to have this thing documented for any kind of regulatory body, for just the security and knowledge of what you're doing. Super, super important. I already talked to this slide. That's a server you're seeing on the screen,
you
right?
have a couple of other questions in the chat.
Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to address those now.
Mary, I can't hear you. I apologize.
So then you had a couple more questions in the chat. I don't know if you want to address those now.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not looking at the chat. Let me let's pull them up.
I can read it to you if it's okay. So Ben, Tony was asking, can you also comment on the need to clear the storage on printers and similar devices, copiers, before disposing of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest vulnerability times for any device, and this especially means printers and copiers, is when they're end of life, when we're going to give them to a charity, hopefully not, but some people want to do that, or we should be securely disposing of those things. That's making sure at a bare minimum we are overwriting the hard drive, hopefully to some kind of mil spec to make sure that we're having security or even better, removing and destroying the hard drives or any kind of long-term security. That's no different from the way we would treat a desktop or laptop or a server. We need to think about security at the end of the life of that device. It's really, really important. If you are purchasing printers from manufacturers that are paying attention, they should give you the ability to securely overwrite the storage, whether it's going to be an EEPROM storage or an actual hard drive. You should be able to overwrite that on a daily, weekly, monthly, whatever time scale you want to do it, kind of a basis. So yeah, that's, and you should be planning that from the day you purchase those devices. You should start thinking about, okay, how long am I going to keep it around? And what am I going to do with it when it's dead? We have a real tendency with print devices to keep them around pretty much forever, right? If it still works, if I can still get pages out of it, then I'm going to keep it. I still go into environments, guys. Back in the days before Armageddon happened, and when we were still talking to, I was out in the world talking to people face to face. Every single month, I'd go into somebody's environment, and somewhere in that company or that organization, usually in a back area, right? Usually sitting next to someone wearing horn-rimmed glasses, there's a printer, and it looks like someone's been chain smoking Camel cigarettes next to that printer for the last 25 years because it's that beautiful like tobacco smoke color, right? Those HP LaserJet 4s are still out there. Those HP, the 4520s are still out there en masse. Here's the thing, we overbuilt those printers, right? And that's great. We got a lot of value out of them. I understand that it is your fiduciary responsibility to use that asset as long as you possibly can. But at some point, it becomes a bigger risk to keep that device on the network than it is the value you're getting from, hey, I can still put pages through it. Just like a desktop or a laptop, right? I have a Windows 98 laptop somewhere in my closet, okay? I could take it out right now, boot it up, and do some useful work with it. But no sane human would allow that device on their network because it's not a supported operating system anymore. Well, guess what? Those older networked printers, right, are running, many of them, the equivalent of Windows 98. They're no longer supported. There are no security updates for them, and they are a massive security hole. So you need to start thinking about that as well.
Eli would like your email address. He's
Sure.
put that in the chat. So if
Well,
you don't know,
guys, here's the deal. ben.tims@hp.com. I'll put it in the email, but it's super easy to remember. So you're all welcome to whatever. And also remember that our partners Westwind, they have a specialty in print security. We're going to talk about some tools here in just a couple of minutes that will help you to look specifically at the security of the firmware levels on your printers and help you to make some informed and intelligent decisions about how you want to secure your environment, right?
and
So this
Um,
is,
Andrew put, oh,
sorry, this is Tony. I would say you might, and you alluded to this, Ben, quite well. Any intelligent device on your network, and printers are one people don't think about very much. So it's really good you're bringing this up. But anything out there, the odds of it running an operating system are not small. And there's stuff, you mentioned Windows 98, there's stuff out there still running Windows 95.
yeah.
And I saw one a little more recently from a somewhat prominent NMTC member that's running Windows 7 in their ATMs. My wife banks there. I said, well, do you want to just have money and not have it draw down your account? We can handle that. She declined, but these devices and like I say, printers are one. I'm really glad to see this because they're one of the things everybody's got, probably got more than they think they have, and don't understand what they're really exposed to. So thank you.
My pleasure.
so Ben, Andrew has a question or comment in the chat, and he said, so I'm just going to read it. Why would a printer vendor who presumably up to speed on security's best practices ship a printer with the FTP turned on by default? Or are you referring to legacy printers out there?
So here's the horrible rub of it all. I have to fight to get anything turned off by default on printers because our clients, some of them who are using legacy systems, right, might want to use FTP, and to have it turned off by default and to have them have to do anything to enable that protocol, we get a huge ration of static, right? It should be turned off, but some environments still use FTP, right? So we are doing our best to slowly get rid of. It is stunning how many old protocols are still in common use, and for us to turn them off by default causes so many problems that the default from all print manufacturers, not just us, is we leave almost everything turned on, assuming that when you set up the printer, you're going to turn the stuff off that you need turned off. Now, we do give you some terrific tools to help you to do that. We are the only and I apologize, I'm going to have to put the HP hat on for just a minute. Got to pay some bills, right? HP is the only manufacturer who has a tool that is specifically designed to manage the security settings of your printers, right? We can set, there are more than 250 potential settings on a multifunction device. You can set all of them with a wave of the mouse, click of the button on every HP device across your entire print fleet. If you have a few printers, a handful of printers, not a big deal to go around and turn off protocols and install security certificates, do that kind of stuff. With Security Manager for very low money, you can wave of the mouse, click of the button, do all of that from the beauty and safety of your desktop. You get beautiful reporting about, hey, this is what's going for all those setting kind of stuff, and also manage certificates, do other wonderful things.
So one thing that's probably going to affect that is insurance companies are starting to change how they will cover their customers for cyber related risks. And it's the same as, you want us to cover you for a fire, but you had no fire extinguishers or smoke alarms. Tell me again why I should pay you. And that's starting to happen in cyber as well.
As well it should, and I'm fully in favor of that. HP has gone, especially in our enterprise class printers, are turning more and more of these old protocols off, right? But that's not the default from, especially if you're buying still like retail grade print devices. Those come with no security, generally speaking. And I'm not here to degrade other manufacturers. That's not the point of it. It's just, this is the state of where print is. HP is in the forefront, have been for a very long time, about talking about printers and security. 5 or 6 years ago, we were started to talk about security and seriously, and other manufacturers were saying, HP, this is a solution that is desperately in search of a problem to solve. But in the last couple of years, we've seen everybody else come storming in and say, oh, we're secure too. Let's start talking about security. Okay, that was a little catty. I apologize, but it's true, right? So Dan says, what's wrong with that about having an old printer? Well, a non-networked printer, is there some risk associated? It has those old printers. Well, what's wrong with it? First of all, they use an insane amount of power, right? Because the fusers stay on pretty much forever. They just draw a ton of, so ecologically, it's a really bad idea. And while USB connected devices have a very small attack surface, they don't have a none attack surface. So look, we could argue, we can go round and round about this. Okay. I bring up those LaserJet 4s because A, it's kind of a fun story and a lot of people smiled, right? And B, the idea here that we have those devices that have been around for a very long time, some of them are a serious risk, not the LaserJet 4. Let's be honest about it. But if you've got a 15-year-old printer that's sitting on your network, you better do some homework. Okay, I think we're darn close to the last slide here. Let's see. Okay, doing some kind of an assessment of the firmware of your devices is really important. You should absolutely spend some time and effort looking at what's going on with your firmware. HP has some tools that we have built specifically. If you talk to our friends at Westwind, if you are an HP Direct customer, talk to your HP rep. If you're working with other HP vendors, talk to them and get a firmware assessment done. Let's look at what the firmware is on your printers. If it needs to be updated or it can be updated, great. We have terrific free tools to help you to do that. If the devices are end of support, if we're no longer publishing firmware updates for those, you should know about that. And if there are active vulnerabilities on your network, you should absolutely, and again, this is not something that's covered by pen testing. I've never seen a pen tester look at firmware levels on a printer. If there are some out there, please let me know because I'm way curious to see it. But this level of security has been almost completely ignored by the security hoi polloi. All right, how are we doing on time? Oh, we're right at time. Okay, awesome. I think that's my last slide. In fact, it is. Question for West. Okay, so I'll let Westwind ask. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now. Someone else bring us home.
Thank you very much, Ben. Does anyone else have questions? Please unmute. Ben would love to answer them.
Yep.
This isn't so much a question, but just a little statement that thank you for giving us your email, Ben. Just to let you know, I'll probably email you later in the day just in terms of getting a connection. So just wanted to alert you to that.
Excellent.
And, I also will probably send an email to everyone else here from HP just to be safe. And I guess that's it. Anyone else want to connect?
Well, hey, this is Lenny. I just want to make a quick comment. And I know that, and once again, what a great presentation, Ben. We love your passion. And there was one piece that it was on his frizo. We can make sure we can follow back up. This is once again Lenny from Westwind, and that is it does connect these wonderful printers. Now they're really like a computer, so they do connect and send information back to SIMs like Splunk and other security tools that you may have, like a Palo Alto or Checkpoint. And then ironically, we here at Westwind also have 3D print, so it's still print. So we are involved with the 3D team as well. So as someone said, I think Tony said, anything on the edge could be a target. And I just want to mention that there are some great integrations as well with current security tools that you may have via HP Incorporated for PCs and for print. I'll turn it back to you, Mary.
And also, Lenny, I just wanted to see did you see Tony's questions? can organizations contact you at Westwind for a security assessment around those sorts of devices?
Absolutely. I was just typing in. I was trying to
Okay.
multitask. But yeah, I can be reached at Lenny, Lenny, at www.cpinc.com. Once again, I have access to the full HP Incorporated team. We have mentioned there's a SLED team, commercial team, and federal from a product side and also from a business segment perspective. Thank you once again for that question.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's good for all of us to know so we can spread that message.
Hey, Mary.
Yes.
Oh, this is Dr. Kendall again. I'm going to put my governance, risk, and compliance hat on for a minute and say this really does tie back into what he was saying about making sure you have printer policies. You also need to make sure you have printer deployment standards that call out those specific items that need to be addressed when you're, provisioning a printer into your environment, and more importantly, when you're deprovisioning it. And generally, when we're doing a risk assessment, that is one of the things that we look for as part of their policies and their standards. And we also like to see procedures that are documented around those as well, so that you've got a set protocol that you follow for everything that you're doing with those devices. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I knew that when we started talking about this, I was just blown away by the fact that I thought so many people need to be paying attention to their printers and their copiers and how much information is actually being stored there and how vulnerable that can be. So thank you. That was really great information. So with that, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and end. Deb, did you have anything to say?
No, thank you everyone so much. Thank you to Westwind and HP, and we always appreciate our partnerships. And thank you so much of you to all of our members and board members on. So I hope everybody has a great day. Thank you, Ben. That was
Have
fabulous.
a great day.
Thanks. Aaron, was
Good
that,
day, all.
are you, hang on.
Bye now.
Thanks, everybody. Aaron, did you have a question? Yeah.
I know it was applause.
Oh, okay.
Applause.
In that case, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks so
Bye.
much, Aaron.
Okay, so we'll see all of you next month. September 9th is our next cyber presentation, 11 a.m. So everybody have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you.
Take care.
Great job, Ben, in HPE. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. That was
You,
fun.
Lenny.